The reason why America is in decline is because parents and the older generations have forgotten to teach children and the subsequent generations about what it means to be an American. And in particular, as Christians, we've forgotten to teach our children about what it means to be a Christian. First, I want to thank everybody that has subscribed, liked, commented. I appreciate everything that you've said. No matter what you've said, I appreciate the likes. Please share this with your friends. Make sure you smash the like button. Make sure you hit that share button. We're trying to make sure that everybody know that they're not victims, that they're empowered for greatness, that we can make a difference again in this nation. That we can stand up for biblical values, we can stand up for truth and push back against all the lies and everything that's false that's taking place in this land. So I appreciate that. And please, thank you for looking at my videos and participating and making our voice known.
It's not about race.
What is it about?
Because it's about man's inhumanity to man.
So there's been an uproar this week regarding Whoopi Goldberg and the comments she made about the Holocaust in regards to the banning of books that Governor Youngkin and others are looking to do. And see, the problem is people are tending to conflate the two. Ideally, I am against any banning of books just for the sake of banning books. The reason why people are looking to ban books is because the books weren't there for instruction. They were there for indoctrination. There's a difference. There's a fine line between a book that is there to give factual accuracy about history and a book that's there just to indoctrinate you into a certain lifestyle. For example, there are a number of LGBTQ books that schools were putting on the authorized reading list. What does reading about an LGBTQ person and the actual acts that this person is doing or has dreamed about, what does that have to do with learning? What did that have to do? That has nothing to do with learning. It's all about the social, emotional learning, all the CRT, all that stuff. That has nothing to do with learning. Those books have no place being in a public school library or any school library, period. That is for somebody's personal choice to read. So there's a difference. But when it comes to things, the reason why you have people like Whoopi Goldberg and others, why they can say stuff that the Holocaust was not about race, is because when you start to whitewash and erase history, as the communists and the socialists want us to do, they want us to erase everything about history, or they want to rewrite history, then you have a tendency to repeat history. And that's exactly what happened in this small snippet of a comment about Whoopi Goldberg. Because she probably did not remember that the Holocaust was all about the fact that Hitler saw them as an inferior race. And a matter of fact, this is so reminiscent of what the Nazis did when they took over. You know, they burned books. They burned books because, see, within books, there's history. And I'm gonna read you a passage from Deuteronomy chapter 11. And this is so critical. This explains what we're facing here, especially in America, when they have stopped teaching civics. And so people have no idea about their country, but that is intentional because they want people not to know that the country is a democratic republic and not a true democracy. That we are a democratic republic, that we are based on a constitution, not mob rule. But see, when you erase history, when you don't talk about civics, when you don't break down the three branches of government, when you don't break down how they work together, when you don't explain the fact that it's the state legislature as written in the Constitution that is responsible for elections, when you don't talk about those things, you have false ideas that people are looking to disenfranchise you from voting simply by following the Constitution. Nevertheless, I'm going to read this from Deuteronomy chapter 11. And this is how the Lord wanted the children of Israel to instruct their children. And so he said, therefore, starting at verse 18, therefore he shall lay up these words of mine in your heart and in your soul, and bind them as a sign on your hand, and they shall be as frontlets between your eyes. You shall teach them to your children. The reason why America is in decline is because parents and the older generations have forgotten to teach children and the subsequent generations about what it means to be American. And in particular, as Christians, we've forgotten to teach our children about what it means to be a Christian. Who is a Christian? What does it mean to follow the Word of God? We've lost it. Instead, we've substituted emotions. We've substituted intellectual, mental assent instead of sitting down and talking to our children about the true Word of God. Sitting down and talking to our children about what it means to be an American. Sitting down and talking to our children about what the Constitution really means, the Bill of Rights. We've stopped that, but that has been intentional because parents have been so busy working that they've given their children to the state. And see, the state has been overrun by communists and Marxists and socialists. And so their intent is not to educate your child, but to indoctrinate your child. And so therefore, they will not tell your child about American history, true American history. Especially here in this Black History Month, you will not hear about the Black patriots who helped fight during the Revolutionary War. You will not hear about all the stories of the Black patriots who fought for this country at its inception. You'll hear about all the ills that have beset Black people in this country. You hear all about these things that make us victims. You hear about all of these things that want to gin up grievance and anger. You hear about all of those things. You want to hear about people who gave their lives for this country. You will not hear that. And so I'll continue on. And so he says, speaking of them, when you sit in your house, when you walk by the way, when you lie down, when you rise up, and you shall write them on the doorposts of your house and on your gates, that your days and the days of your children may be multiplied in the land of which the Lord swore to your fathers to give them, like the days of the heavens above the earth. But notice, if you go from Deuteronomy over to Judges chapter 2, you see the same thing happen with them around the 10th verse. When all that generation had been gathered to their fathers, another generation arose after them, who did not know the Lord, nor the work which he had done for Israel. And that's where we are today. There are people in this land, in this world, that do not know about the horrors of the Holocaust, that do not really know about the horrors of slavery, that do not really understand that's on the negative side, but do not understand on the positive side, all the positive contributions that African Americans, that Black people have made to this country, to establish this country, to provoke this country to live up to its ideals. And so you have incidents like you had with Whoopi Goldberg. She's not the only one. I'm sure there have been other people who think that, who've forgotten how horrific the Holocaust was, how Hitler viewed the Jews, how he viewed them as inferior, same way he viewed Black people. But he had more of a hatred for Jews because it was a spiritual component to it. Children of Israel, the Jews, are the chosen people of God. So naturally the enemy wants to come against them and destroy them. But nevertheless, when you forget history, when you whitewash history, you get the Whoopi Goldberg comments. When you want to erase history, when you want to tear down statues, when you want to remove monuments, this is what you get. This is what you get. You forget. See, those monuments, while I disagree with why they were put up in the first place, I mean, they were put up by members of the KKK and white supremacists in the South to romanticize the Confederate time period and to project an image of terror and fear for black people that are living in those areas at that time. So I'm not subscribing to the idea that those statues should have went up in the first place. But nevertheless, they were up as a memorial to a time when America was being torn apart based on race. And that's exactly what is happening to us today. But the communists and the Marxists want that to happen. They're using race the same way the Southerners and the Confederates used race back in the day, to divide us. That's their whole intent, to use race to divide us. And that's what Hitler did. Hitler used race to divide, to give the German people a target, to gin them up to the point to where they saw all Jewish people as the reasons for their issues. And so when you whitewash history, when you erase history, you get the Whoopi Goldberg comments. We are not victims. We are empowered for greatness. We must teach history in its fullest context. We must talk about history in its fullest context, the good and the bad. But only history that's there to inform, not to indoctrinate, not to manipulate, and not to persuade. We are not victims. We are empowered for greatness. Thank you so much for liking your comments and subscribing to the channel. Please share this with your friends. Smash that like button. Smash the subscription bell. Share this with everybody you know. We're trying to make sure people understand that they're not victims, that they are empowered for greatness, and all this stuff that's out here that's telling them otherwise is false and will not benefit them in the end. So please, I appreciate that. Share that.